Campaign 90, the Oklahoma vote.
Good evening, I'm Clayton Vaughn.
And I'm Beth Ringel, and welcome back to Campaign 90, the Oklahoma vote. Let's look at the governor's race and the Democratic board right now. There we go. We see David Walters with 27% of the votes, but Lewis and Watkins tied for first. Steve Lewis, the House Speaker from Shawnee, and Wes Watkins, the Congressman from Ada, tied with David Walters, second place, the Oklahoma businessman. Right now we're going to go to Brent Hardin, the David Walters campaign headquarters. Brent, I want to ask you, David has developed this come-from-behind reputation. Is he going to rely on that right at this point?
I spoke to a campaign consultant here just a few minutes ago, Beth, and he said yes, that's their campaign strategy. They have considered David Walters to be an underdog all along, and they expected to be running a come-from-behind campaign. They have heard the results that show Walters running third, and perhaps not surprisingly say that those numbers are so preliminary that they're practically meaningless. And of course there is a long night of counting votes ahead tonight. They are counting on heavy voter turnout. They think that will help Walters, and of course we'll just have to wait and see if that's true. Beth?
You're absolutely right. It is very early in the race. Right now, let's go to the governor's race and look at the Republican candidates. And as you can see, Vince Orza has 28% of the votes, followed by Burns Hargis, the Oklahoma City attorney, and Bill Price, a former U.S. attorney. And, of course, that's just 1% of the precincts reporting. Clayton?
We want to fill you in on a race that's really developing into something of a personal contest here in eastern Oklahoma, and that is for the Democratic nomination for the District 2 congressional campaign here in eastern Oklahoma. Mike Siner is the incumbent, of course, and he's been in Congress for 4 terms, I believe, perhaps 5. And he is seeing a fairly good challenge during this campaign from Jack Ross, who is a Coweta attorney, and this has featured, among other things, some negative campaigning on Ross's part, and also some reprimand by Democratic officials. And we want to go down now and show you just one piece of video that occurred earlier in the evening, because the rivalry between Siner and Ross may be getting a little personal. Earlier this evening we talked to Ross, who's told us he feels he's waging a strong campaign because Siner is doing some things that hasn't been met, and that was Siner's reaction to that. Sticking his tongue out at the monitor, which is sort of a curious thing to do, I suppose. And we have asked Congressman Siner to watch the video along with us, and there he is. Congressman, well, why did you do that, Congressman?
Well, Clayton, we weren't sticking our tongue out at the video because we couldn't see it from where I was standing. I was sticking my tongue out to the Tulsa World reporter that told me to smile. I've got nieces and nephews and everybody running around here, and I was really kind of playing with them. And I thought you all were going to start on a single shot of Terry Hadley, but you started on an open shot, and that's exactly why you're always told to watch what you're doing once you hook up.
Well, we have an old saying in this business that all mics are hot and all cameras are live, but perhaps it's time that we pass that one along to you. But you are absolutely sure that you were not responding to Mr. Ross in terms of that comment that he made, and that it was in fact to a Tulsa World reporter.
That's right. They were trying to do 2 or 3 things at one time, and regrettably I got caught sticking my tongue out trying to smile at the same time.
Even congressmen perhaps can be human.
Absolutely.
Congressman, we will be watching the returns along with you and throughout the evening, and thank you very much for straightening that out for us. But it will be a memorable little piece of video that we will pass along.
I'm sure it'll be on your Christmas tape.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Good point.
Yes,
okay. Oh, we're going to be back with more election results, but right now, back to the movie.
Let's take a look at the Democratic side right now. We have Steve Lewis, the Speaker of the Oklahoma House, out in front with 41% of the vote. Then a very close second and third race going on here with Wes Watkins, the 3rd District Congressman, with 27%, and David Walters, the Oklahoma City businessman, and 4 years ago, the Democratic standard bearer, with 26% of the vote. Now again, this is only with 2% of the precincts reporting, so it's far too early in the evening to tell, but Steve Lewis has come up with a lead, and that lead, however tenuous and however early, is still a lead. Kim Graham is standing by at the Steve Lewis headquarters here in Tulsa, where the watch party is going to go on. And Kim, is there any kind of a feeling of jubilance at this hour, or is it just too early down there?
Well, you bet, Clayton. There are a lot of happy people here. The supporters are really beginning to filter in now, and those who are here are more than pleased with the early returns. They say they're pleased but not surprised. The Lewis people have always felt that Tulsa County and northeastern Oklahoma were territories that would be taken by Steve Lewis. Now, we may add that Lewis is doing very well in Oklahoma County, which comes as a surprise to some. Now, according to a poll commissioned by KOTV News just as recent as this week, it showed that Lewis was running a very close race here in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City. So right now, things are going pretty well as predicted by the Lewis camp. Of course, this is very early in the evening, and we actually have a very long night ahead of us, so anything could happen. Clayton?
All right, Kim Graham reporting from the headquarters for Steve Lewis here in Tulsa.
Let's look now at the Republican candidates in the governor's race. As you can see, at this point, Vince Orza is still in the lead, followed by Burns Hargis, an Oklahoma City attorney, and Bill Price, a successful prosecutor in Oklahoma City, is in third place, and this is with 2% of the precincts reporting. Now let's go to Terry Hood and the other races. Terry?
Thank you, Beth. We've got a number of races of statewide interest to update you on. First, we're going to look at the race for lieutenant governor. Of course, the man who currently holds that job, Robert Kerr, is giving it up to run for Congress in the 3rd District, and a number of candidates have filed to take his place. Just 1% of the precincts reporting right now. Lee Kate, a rather slim lead there with 12% of the vote, and that's on the Democratic side. A few more Democratic contenders. Jack Mildren, who is a former University of Oklahoma quarterback, some impressive numbers there, 48% of the vote. Davis with 19%. On the Republican side, in the race for lieutenant governor, former Transportation Secretary Neil McCaleb out in front with 57% of the vote, Neese with 25% of the vote, and Withrow with 14% of the vote. We're also going to look at the race for state treasurer. This is an interesting one. Incumbent Ellis Edwards, just 3 days before the filing period ended, he had no opposition in that race. A critical audit came out, and it drew a whole host of contenders for the treasurer's office, and it looks like Edwards is in something of a battle. So far, he's pulling in 33% of the vote, Nesbitt with 23% of the vote, Greason with 4% of the vote, and on the Republicans, or the Democratic side still rather, Ford with 23% of the vote, Marr 6% of the vote. Now on the Republican side in the race for state treasurer, we have Elmer Million with 26% of the vote, Claudette Henry ahead on the Republican side with 39% of the vote. In the race now for State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Sandy Garrett, who is currently the Education Secretary, ran a very strong race, and she's out to a very commanding lead so far. Only 2% of the precincts reporting, but Sandy Garrett picking up 69% of the vote to David Fisher's 31% of the vote. And that's how it looks for now in the statewide races. Now we go back to Beth and Clayton.
All right, thank you very much, Terry. And we will be back shortly with more returns as they become available. Nothing settled so far. Perhaps an interesting evening ahead.
These figures come together. So stay in here with us, and we're going to be mixing and mingling, and also going upstairs to start checking the various counties all over the state. So just hang tight, and we'll have another report just a little later on. Love all of you. You're a great bunch. Okay, we're going to
Watkins over in Oklahoma City, saying that he was going to go upstairs and take a look at some of his county-by-county returns. I'm sure that he has been in politics long enough to have organized an organization that's going to be able to take care of those kinds of things. And if you were listening to him carefully, I'm sure you heard him say that in one of the districts, and I assume he was talking about a congressional district out in the 4th District of Oklahoma, which would be in southwest Oklahoma, that he had a really commanding lead, like 74% of the vote, and much of that rural vote is yet to come in. So right now we are going to take a break, and then we will be back in just a few moments with more news and the 10 o'clock news and more election returns.